It began quietly, as most tragedies do. A gray sky hanging low over the valleys of central China, the sound of rain against wooden rooftops, a drizzle that became a storm, and a storm that never seemed to end. No one knew that this rain, this ordinary, familiar rain, would become the deadliest natural disaster in human history. In 1931, China was a land divided between the past and the future. Warlords still ruled much of the countryside. The central government struggled to keep control. Poverty was everywhere, but life continued as it always had, bound to the rhythms of the great rivers, the Yangtze, the Yellow River, and the Huai. These were not just waterways. They were the veins of a civilization. They carried trade, fed millions, and carved the land into fertile plains that had sustained China for centuries. But the people who lived beside them also carried an unspoken fear. They knew that when the rivers grew restless, nothing could stop them. The winter of 1930 had been harsh and unyielding. Snow blanketed the mountains in the north. When spring arrived, the meltwater began to pour down toward the valleys. Then in the early summer of 1931 came the rains. Heavy, ceaseless, unnatural. From June to August, the skies over China opened. In some regions, it rained for 40 consecutive days. Villagers looked to the heavens in disbelief. Old men said they had never seen the like. At first, it seemed manageable. Flooding was a part of life. People stacked sandbags, reinforced dikes, prayed to the river gods. But soon they realized this was not a normal season. The rivers rose higher each day, their muddy waters turning into wild torrents. Entire fields vanished beneath the waves. Then the villages began to go. By late July, the great Yangtze had burst through its levees. The water swept across the plains like a living creature, unstoppable, merciless, blind. In one night, entire towns disappeared. From above, it would have looked as though the earth itself had become an ocean. Imagine waking to the sound of rushing water, not outside your door, but beneath it. You grab what you can, a child, a bundle of clothes, a photograph. Then you climb higher and higher until the roof is your only refuge. You look across what used to be your village and see nothing but endless brown water. Neighbors float by, clinging to pieces of wood. The air smells of mud and fear. The floodwaters moved eastward, swallowing provinces one by one. Hubei, Anhui, Jiangsu. Reports spoke of seas without shore. Boats sailed over what had once been rice fields. Railways, roads, and bridges were gone. Communication broke down. The central government in Nanjing could not even count the dead. As weeks passed, the true horror began. The water stayed. It did not drain away. Vast areas remained submerged for months. People ran out of food. Grain stores were gone. Livestock drowned. Harvests destroyed. Those who had survived the floods now faced starvation. And when hunger comes, it brings desperation. There were stories of families selling their possessions for a bowl of rice. Others left their homes, walking for days through flooded land in search of help. Many never returned. Eyewitnesses spoke of the dead floating in groups, entire families locked in a final embrace. Disease soon followed. The heat of summer mixed with stagnant water, breeding mosquitoes and bacteria. Cholera, dysentery, and typhus spread like wildfire. Doctors were overwhelmed. Medicine was scarce. Hospitals turned into morgues. The government, already weak and divided, tried to respond but was powerless. Relief shipments were delayed or looted. Local officials were cut off by floodwaters. Some regions went weeks without contact from the outside world. In their isolation, the survivors built makeshift rafts from doors, bamboo, or even coffins, drifting toward the hope of dry land. By the end of 1931, entire provinces were devastated. Census records, though incomplete, reveal a staggering reality. 4 million people dead, 4 million lives washed away. To put that in perspective, that is more than the combined population of modern-day Los Angeles and Chicago, gone in a single season. And yet few outside China even heard of it. The world was busy with its own troubles. The Great Depression, rising political tensions, a Europe on the edge of another war. A disaster of unimaginable scale unfolded, and humanity barely noticed. The silence surrounding the 1931 floods is as haunting as the event itself. There were no global relief campaigns, no iconic photographs, no famous journalists on the scene. Just the slow, quiet suffering of millions who were forgotten almost as soon as they drowned. But even within China, the memory faded. The war with Japan in the late 1930s, then the civil war that followed, erased much of the collective memory of that year. The survivors grew old, their stories untold. Still, traces of their struggle remain, in faded diaries, in government archives, in whispered family histories. One letter, written by a man named Li Jun from the city of Wuhan, reads, "The water has taken everything. My wife and children are gone. I cannot cry anymore. If I live, I will plant again, though the land no longer knows me." His words are one of the few human voices left from that year, a voice echoing across time, reminding us that behind every number, there was a face. The 1931 flood was not just a natural disaster. It was also a political and social one. China's fragile government lacked the ability to coordinate a national response. For centuries, flood control had been the backbone of imperial power. Emperors were judged by their ability to tame the rivers. When the rivers rebelled in 1931, it symbolized more than a weather catastrophe. It marked the failure of an entire system. In the decades that followed, China transformed. Dams, levees, and hydrological projects reshaped the landscape. The most famous of them, the Three Gorges Dam, stands as both a monument to human ambition and a shadow of this old tragedy. It is in many ways a promise to the dead, a vow that the rivers would never again claim so many lives. But the question remains, can humanity truly control nature? Or are we merely delaying its next lesson? The 1931 flood is more than history. It is a mirror. It reflects the arrogance of civilization and the fragility of human life. We build cities, walls, and machines to protect ourselves, yet all it takes is water, simple, ancient, unstoppable water, to remind us of our place. When the rivers finally receded in late autumn, the land they left behind was unrecognizable. What had been rich farmland was now a wasteland of cracked mud and debris. Survivors wandered through what used to be their villages, unable to find the spots where their homes once stood. In the silence that followed, China began to rebuild. But how do you rebuild after something like that? How do you measure loss when it has no end? When even memory sinks beneath the waves? Perhaps that is why this story is so rarely told. Because it forces us to confront a truth we prefer to forget, that nature is not our enemy nor our servant. It simply exists, vast and indifferent. And when it moves, the world changes. In the end, the Great Flood of 1931 left more than destruction. It left a warning, carved not in stone but in water, that progress without respect leads to ruin. That arrogance invites tragedy, and that history, no matter how forgotten, always returns when its lessons are ignored. So the next time we stand before a river, dam, or storm, perhaps we should remember the millions who once trusted the calm before the flood. Because the rain will always fall again, and when it does, the question will remain, have we learned anything at all? If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it. We will explore the world together, so don't forget to subscribe to my channel to not miss my new videos. See you in the next video.